This poem that I'm about to do, I wrote about 5 years ago, and I was inspired to write the poem basically out of anger. I wrote the poem after hearing about cases of illegal, what they call illegal immigrants or immigrants that were being deported, but they were being tricked into um, turning themselves in or being tricked into custody. And what was happening was they were being put in these warehouses that were utilized by the government. That was, they coerced these people that owned these warehouses to believing that they was going to use them for some other reason. But instead they was using them to house immigrants that they were going to deport back to their countries. So they were giving these immigrants, and this is before Trump, and they were giving these immigrants the opportunity to go back to their country or spend time in jail for 6 months. And so the immigrants were, a lot of the immigrants were choosing to do the 6 months in prison because they still needed a way to send money back home to their families, or to pay for their families, to send money in need, to give money to their families in need. And the situation to me was so draconian, it really kind of upset me. And what happened was a lot of these immigrants were working in these chicken warehouses and in different plants and stuff like that, and they were convinced by managers to get these social security numbers so they can stay here that didn't belong to them. And so when the bus came, the plant people that were holding the plant owners basically threw the managers that were Hispanic under the bus because, you know, and they kind of went scot free, but the blame or the liability went on the managers. And a lot of these immigrants didn't even know what was going on, but they were victims. They were subjected to it and victims of it because all they wanted to do was come to this country to make a new life for themselves and to escape horrendous conditions. So that kind of bothered me. So I wrote this poem during that time, but I also wrote the poem during the time of the execution of Gaddafi and how it's mimicked so much of the execution of or assassination of Patrice Lumumba. And Gaddafi, he wasn't the greatest person in the world, but what he did want to do was to unite the countries of Africa into one state of Africa so that they could protect their resources. And so this poem that I'm about to do, was kind of inspired by all those events that were taking place, because I kind of saw where we were going to be headed in this day and time, and it's quite relevant to what is going on right now. And so the poem is called Indelible Stain. And one of the reasons why I wrote the poem is because I noticed how a lot of the conscious culture people, and this is not to bomb on people that are celebrating Thanksgiving. Power to you. It's good to give thanks and be grateful. We have in our culture, we call it a feast of gratitude. So, but I just noticed how you have a lot of conscious people who were opposed of the things, including myself, that were opposed of the things that were going on in countries of Africa with their resources being stolen from them, but it's also is the things that were going on with illegal immigrants who are really descendants of indigenous Native Americans in this country. But when it came down to Thanksgiving and what Thanksgiving originally represented, we ignored that and celebrated the Thanksgiving. And we did it, and we kind of gave it our own meaning, but the underlying meaning we still ignored. So that's where this particular poem spawned from. And I didn't mean to take that long to explain it, but the poem is called Indelible Stain. I want to leave a print upon the world like turkey and stuffing traditions, creeping their way into conscious culture, melting away truths in every morsel as you join illegal settlers' complaints against indigenous illegal immigrants. I want to leave a stain upon the world like trends and stereotypes and hypnotic indoctrinations that tear down walls of integrity and fortitude like Jericho. Only I want to build them up with a titanium metal unknown to this realm, so when people see it, like the pyramids of Egypt, it remains for thousands of years and motherfuckers still don't know how I built it. I want to leave an imprint upon your brain that'll seep into your DNA and like a virus infect you with consciousness and destroy any progeny to ignorance that can, will, or has surfaced in your mind and hearts. So you can see how detrimental it is to tear down the walls of your own home to use as a foundation for another, leaving your children exposed to unnatural disasters, chemicals, genetic, trendy, and techno warfare. I want to leave indentations upon nations so that you can see that your vitiligo of the brain is no longer an illness or a disease, but a self-induced Uncle Ruckus temporary fix you hope can erase the indelible pain, not realizing the only cure stands back at the crossroads of emancipation from physical slavery into a mental fetter. Because the only way you're going to be treated like you're not a slave is if you stop thinking like one. I want to leave doors open to your psyche so charismatic Nobel Peace speakers can be exposed in autumn and stand bare as trees, especially those infested with ticks and bugs, and the only way for the rest of us trees in the orchard are to survive is if his infectious layers of lies are stripped away, and the only thing that he and the rest of the world can see is that window seat to bare truth as you stand to represent someone who has the fortitude to be cut down for honor and integrity rather than a soul living rings of an impression of lies and cowardliness in his story. I want to leave a hotline to your heart so populations can overcome that abused wife syndrome and realize how much you can do better without him and open your eyes to see the difference between justice being served and a conspiracy to rob you of your resource, and that every noble murder is not justified when the shadows of equality a controlling intelligent army that's creeping about upon his belly, injecting his venom into plights in public, blinding them so they can't see that a demand for a change of regime in a third world country is no different than state taking over the streets of a corporation in efforts to save the economic future of our nation. I want to leave a tight beat to a perfect lyric so you can see the harm in stripping away a bass line and live percussion and replacing it with a falsetto or a false echo or R&B synthesized vibrations seeping into your soul like a hypnotic mantra, stealing enlightened strength that kept you strong, then lashing whips to strip pride, integrity, and self-love. And the only way that a kingdom could ever come from above is if you free your mind and reunite yourself to the beats and tones of El Kun. Now they called you Kun, but didn't know they were calling you nine ether creative forces of the universe. I want to leave endings with true beginnings and holistic healing concepts and realities that everything you ever needed was put here before religious crusades and peacemaking killing squads and avaricious powers so that you can understand. No, so that you can overstand that if we truly gave power to the beast, you hear me? If we truly gave power to the beast, then we are the gods that can take his head and free land and country from that iron machine that consumes this nation before it becomes as desolate as our souls. I want to leave a creative consciousness so you can fashion concepts that separating you from your culture is like separating you from your soul for the sole purpose of stealing your God-given inheritance, that divinity in your bloodline that intertwines with your ancestors, your celestial fathers, you. You are the masters of your own destiny, and it's for you to take hold. Command the universe and it will bow to you as the mysteries once told. Find that light in the darkness and become that lighthouse that paves the way for a new birth of conscious beings, for ye are gods, and all of ye are the children of the Most High. I want to leave an indelible stain that brings about a plethora of change, so that the only thing that does remain throughout generations and time is the universal language of harmony, peace, and love. Harmony, peace, and love. Say it with me. Harmony, peace, and love. Ashi. This is dedicated to all the children that are still in custody, waiting for their fate to either be sent back to their countries or made or put in situations where they still are not recognized or have the chance to become citizens. For those children whose 500 plus families where parents were taken away from them and they didn't have the decency to record where they sent their families. And as of now, they still don't know where their families are. So this is dedicated as we complain about why we can't share time with our families, what these children are going through. This poem was dedicated to them. Hotep, peace, and thank you for your time.